Guys, welcome back. I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Today we are taking a look at another viral video coming out of Ukraine. This is video of the destroyed pontoon bridge as Russian forces tried to cross this river, and it was destroyed by Ukrainian forces. We are going to be taking a look at just how this disastrous crossing seems to have happened to the Russians and how the Ukrainians exploited Russian tactical errors. Of course, do me a favor, guys, hit that subscribe button. We are only 25,000 subs away from 100K, and you know it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't mean you're going to see every single video, but it will help me out a lot. So once we've done that, let's get into it. Okay, so what we've got here, and in fact here, I'll even make it somewhat bigger and I'll be smaller so you guys can point this out. So this is only 45 seconds long, and what we can see here, this is actually probably the best shot of the destroyed bridge. You can actually see where the Russians were trying to establish this pontoon bridge, and when they talk about a pontoon bridge, it's the term for a temporary bridge built across a river that can accommodate heavy military vehicles. And usually it's assembled in segments where you lay down a segment and it has inflatable, think of them as inflatable barrels underneath them, right? So you lay them down, you hook them together one after the other, and then you're able to drive your tanks across it without too much issue. Now, what's interesting is in the US military has identified this river crossings, is what they're sometimes called, as being tactically extremely sensitive situations. And that's because you know that every single tank in a theater has to cross a bridge to get from point A to point B. So if you're the enemy knows you want to get to point B, and they know that you're at point A, they can say, listen, they can only cross a bridge at a few specific points. And especially if you've already destroyed every bridge, you know that they're going to have to stop and build a new bridge connecting two roads. Because think about it, the tanks can't drive through forests, they can't drive obviously through lakes or swampland, so they need roads to be able to move. So you just look at a map, you say, where are the roads, monitor each one of them, where are the roads large enough to accommodate tanks, you monitor each one of them, and eventually you'll see where the enemy is trying to construct a pontoon bridge. This is almost certainly what the Ukrainian forces did. As you guys probably know, I was traveling to Mexico recently, and to post content, I had to connect to some questionable public Wi-Fi networks. It also meant that when I shopped online, all my prices were in pesos, and my wife and I couldn't even access our favorite streaming shows from the US. However, I wouldn't have had any of those problems if I had used today's video sponsor, NordVPN. NordVPN allows you to secure your internet activity and change your virtual internet location. Get an exclusive deal at NordVPN by going to nordvpn.com/combatveteran or use promo code combatveteran. And it's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. NordVPN is a great way to secure your online activity. It conceals your IP, shields your data from snoopers, and protects you from cyber attacks. And that's essential when you're traveling and you're on networks you might not fully trust, like coffee shop Wi-Fi or airport Wi-Fi. You can also change your virtual location so you can watch your favorite shows from back in the States or wherever your home is, no matter what country you're traveling to. NordVPN has also launched their advanced threat protection feature. It's the next step in digital security. It neutralizes cyber threats before they can infect your device. It makes your browsing safer and smoother. It helps you identify potentially malware-ridden files, stops you from landing on malware-infected websites, and blocks trackers and intrusive ads on the spot. So get an exclusive deal from NordVPN at nordvpn.com/combatveteran or use promo code combatveteran. And it's risk-free. And thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. This is why in a conventional war, bridges are so often destroyed, right? Because it can sometimes take militaries, especially someone like the Russians, who may not have great maps to begin with, it may be a real struggle for them to find even suitable crossing sites. So what happens once they find one? Well, they're going to have within the military some sort of mobile bridging capability. In the US, we have a couple of different ones. We have a vehicle that literally has a bridge that folds out up off a vehicle and can span short rivers. Rivers like this, you can use multiple pontoon bridges that slide off of trucks and slide off of one another to land in place, right? And then get hooked together. And we can get across a river, get a bridge built in around 45 minutes. The Russians appear to not have something quite so segmented and so efficient. You can see these are big bridge segments that are currently floating in the water. So it means that they probably had to bring it up from an earlier front. However, let's take a look at exactly what we think happened here, right? So you can see that there's a lot of smoldering wreckage of tanks and other vehicles all clustered along this near side. And along the far side, it looks like there's some material, but not nearly as much. Then the camera pans, and here we go. We have a more zoomed out sight. You can really clearly see. So Russia established here what's called in U.S. military parlance a staging area. And you can almost see the places where their vehicles were probably parked in preparation for their crossing of the bridge. This is a massive tactical liability, obviously. In the U.S. military, we do everything in our power to not cluster tons of units on near or far side of these bridges because they're so tactically sensitive. And if you look carefully at this shot, you can see, look at this here. Looks like artillery craters all around here, pockmarking the entire area. And so what probably seems to have happened is that the Ukrainian forces realized the Russians were gathered on the near side of the bridge and had pre-positioned artillery at this bridge, and then we're just launching these strikes into this gigantic area. And it was like shooting fish it would have been probably like shooting fish in a barrel because there's no cover, there's no concealment. The Russians cleared it and obviously had a significant number of artillery, tank, and other mechanized units here, allowing the artillery to just obliterate it. And there's only one road that they can escape from. They're literally up against this river here. They can't drive the tanks into the river. So in the U.S. military, we avoid this by stringing out our forces, doing what's called traffic control. And so we ensure that only relatively small numbers of pre-decided material come up to the staging area before crossing. So they'll sit there and say, hey, we have 10, 20, 30 tanks that are crossing now. Let's say they're Company A. Then you'll have Company B's tanks staged here, Company C's tank staged here, and the rest will be significantly further away down the road in a more secure combat-ready posture. That means that there's never a significant amount of combat power trapped on this side of the bridge. Again, the Russians probably did something similar, but just the sheer size of this staging area and the fact that even after this, we're looking at, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm seeing at least 10 disabled tanks here in this shot alone. Right? There's even more. And it looks like these are all shots from the same angle. Okay, so here looks like a shot of maybe this was another staging area, right? We talked about this. The Russians probably did the same thing, strung their forces along in a combat posture. But again, it just appears that unlike the US, the Russians packed their forces in very densely. This is actually a much better illustration of what a unit waiting to cross that bridge might look like. You can see they're off to the side of the road. They're spaced much further apart, and they are awaiting their turn to get called up to cross the bridge. So this is probably more secure. And you can see these tanks, they seem to have maybe survived a little better, though this entire region looked like it was just reduced to rubble. I'm sort of fascinated by what this black is. It seems like there's almost too much of it for it to have been a grassland. I mean, maybe it's a controlled burn by a farmer or some sort of fire that was ignited by a tank being destroyed, because you can see there's a lot of these taller trees are intact. That's going to be my guess, is that somehow the destruction of tanks, burning fuel and the like, ignited a small wildfire that burned itself out. Wow. Wow. And look at all this. These are obviously farmers' fields. And you can see here, look at just the number of artillery rounds that were just peppered into these fields, right? You can just see that this fire was just very, very concentrated. They knew that the Russian tanks were all going to be around this area. I imagine probably in this road, right? You can see here, it looks like these fields are maybe plowed. Maybe there's no vegetation here. And then it looks like these fields that are forested, burned, probably when tanks hidden inside them caught fire. So again, wow, that is a lot of fire. You can see, yeah, there's still some smoldering fire here. So you can see here that the Russians, there we go. So you can see here, the Russian military really just, well, they just bunched up too much. They just didn't seem to understand the tactical need, the threat they were under. They treated it like it was a administrative bridge crossing when in fact it was a tactical bridge crossing. They also, I mean, to be in range of artillery just means they totally failed to secure this area before crossing. Okay, there's a couple of troopers who look like maybe these are intact tanks and these troopers are maybe trying to reposition or do a battle damage assessment. Again, terrifyingly, they just appear unable to engage these drones at all that are overhead. The drones are just continuing to gather intelligence, watch the enemy, identify positions. Yeah, here's one of the tanks that was hit, burning. Here's two other tanks, a third one. Yeah, so it looks like the Ukrainians identified the one bridge, the one road that Russian forces were going to have to cross. They pre-positioned their artillery to just throw rounds at it once the Russians were at their most vulnerable, at their most bunched up there at the bridgehead, and then probably tried to cut off the exit in which the Ukrainians could flee, or I'm sorry, which the Russians could flee this road here, this very narrow road, which looks like it can accommodate basically one tank at a time, and just turned this into another shooting gallery. These tanks here that survived probably are the ones that either were already pulled off to the side, sort of under a little bit of cover, waiting security, pulling security, or waiting for their turn to go after it. Yep. So again, guys, really, truly a testament to just the growing, what they call integrated fires for the Ukrainian forces, who are able to not just use drones, use other intelligence sources to identify the enemy's location and use their artillery to put rounds down range, but the speed at which the Ukrainians are doing it seems to almost be growing more rapid. They seem to be getting better at what's sometimes called like a target acquisition cycle, or targeting. Remember, these bridges, even if the Russians are twice as slow as the United States, right? If it took them an hour and a half to deploy this pontoon bridge, that still means that probably within less than a day, the Ukrainians had identified exactly where the Russians were putting the bridge, had put their artillery within 10 miles of that bridge-ish, that's usually the range of artillery, and then put rounds down range, a lot of rounds down range. And they were just ready to do it. Once they knew it, they responded. And that's an incredibly fast cycle to operate as a land army, especially in a conventional artillery and armor-heavy war. So again, it's a testament to Ukraine's growing capability as a military force, and frankly, Russia's almost diminishing capacity, right? Their best tankers, their best soldiers have been cycled off the battlefield, we'll say. I think YouTube is unpleased with me describing exactly why these soldiers aren't in the fight on the Russian side, but they are not. And what's left is, of course, amateurish, extremely green conscripts. Many of their senior commanders still aren't in the fight anymore. So it just means that you're seeing more and more erroneous decisions. There's less and less opportunity for Russian lessons to be learned, and more instances, you're going to see more and more instances like this, where poor Russian tactics, poor Russian strategy, poor Russian battlefield security and battlefield awareness results in a pretty big disaster for their forces. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for joining me. If you guys want to check out a couple of videos where I do reactions to some stuff that's maybe a little bit spicier than what YouTube usually has, you want to check out Patreon. Link is in the description. Thanks, of course, to our Lieutenant tier patrons right here, and I'll see you guys in the next one.